feature presentation.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wealth Management Advisory Club meeting. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Some of you may have met this person because we brought him in last year. HSBC with Barth Frank. Guys, please give me undivided attention. Let's ask a lot of questions, make this meeting engaging and fun. And with that, Barth, I'll let you take it away from here.
Yeah, and as Jack and Pat and others that have taken part in previous sessions know, I'm not into the slides. I do enough slides in other meetings, right? And I want this to be as interactive, engaging as possible. I think I'll stick to the same framework, right, that I have in the past. Kind of let you guys know about the opportunities in the graduate and internships program. I don't know which grades we have on the line right now, but I'll go over that. I'll also give you a lay of the land of the industry in general when it comes to graduate program and analyst programs. Then we'll talk about, what can we say, the recent news, right? I'll briefly touch upon that, right? Because I usually look back at the crisis in 2008 and moving forward, thinking that something like that, you know, very well might happen again. And not to that degree, but it kind of woke everybody up that, you know, not to lose sight of the steering wheel, so to speak. And then I'll answer any questions you guys may have about anything, including hybrid office space that you might be entering into this summer with any internships, right? Or any job roles that you might be entering upon graduation. So let's first start on Barth Frank. I am the senior manager of the graduate program. I've been with HSBC 22 years. Pat and I used to be colleagues many years ago, and Pat has remained in touch with me along with Mary and the rest of the team in keeping you guys in the loop when it comes to postings, graduate analyst postings. I run the rotational programs for private bank and personal banking and wealth. There's 2 programs in the US under that business. Now, we also have analyst programs in global banking and markets, commercial banking as well. Right now, Global Banking and Markets has posted their roles for 2024 for internship. So that would be rising juniors, rising seniors. 24. That's how competitive it's gotten. The banks and financial services are posting their analyst roles as much as 2 years in advance when it comes to their rising junior internships. So if you're a freshman, right, you have to think 2 years in advance if that's where you want to go to kickstart your career. This is the earliest we've ever gone. HSBC is, you know, an international bank. On any given take, we're probably the largest international bank, second some days depending on deposit flows. In the US, right, we're around the 11th largest bank, but we are modeled much differently than the US banks many of you might be used to. So we're located in 65 different countries. What we're called is a matrix organization. It's not pyramidal as an American bank might be. What does that mean? Well, we have co-headquarters in Hong Kong and London. Our US headquarters are in New York. And then there's satellite locations in 65 locations, 65 different countries with the 4 different business lines: wealth and personal banking, private banking, commercial banking, and global banking and markets, which includes investment banking and trading. We are not looking to be a bank for everybody. If you're an international, what we call cosmocrat, who might own a business, right, or is affluent and wants to have international connectivity when it comes to your personal and business finances, we're the place for you. Because we could connect you via the trade route, commercial route, the wealth planning route, right, and the tax planning route for both your business and your personal overall. Obviously, we deal with huge conglomerates that have international presence as well. That's our sweet spot. As far as a career, if you're internationally minded, right, and you want to travel the world, HSBC, as Pat knows, embraces mobility. They, in fact, want to see from their senior leaders and their young emerging talent coming out of the program that they are willing to go around the world to build their career and advance HSBC as an organization. Obviously, we're very diverse, being in 65 countries. We have over a dozen employee resource groups. So to name a few, we have Pride, African Heritage, Balance, which is our women's network, and we have Generations, which is basically, was started by the YZ generation to connect all the generations together, because some of us grew up in different worlds, right, at different times as far as generations, and we feel it's very beneficial that we exchange ideas from your generation to the baby boomer generation, right? I am part of what's called the ambidextrous generation, better known as the X generation. I know a little bit about computers and technology, and I have some soft skills. You guys are looked on as rapid in technology with soft skills. And that's where the give and take on teams, if you look at us, we're very diverse ethnically, gender, right? And that continues to get better and better if you look at our transparent data, and you could find that online, like you can with all the other banks now, as far as the growth of our diversity. So let's talk about a little bit about what happened with the news recently, right? So since 2008, right, banks are regulated more often than ever, right? And this is an example of a regional bank, right, in a up and coming, right, area of the world, connected to many, many countries in advancing technology. But if you look at their client base, 78% of the client base was connected to tech or biotech. So when you speak about spreading the wealth and being diverse in that regard, they weren't. And 6 to 8 weeks ago, right, was the whole fintech crypto collapse. Well, that resonated with a lot of other companies, and in a rising interest rate environment. So what we learned in 2008 was a little bit different than what we learn now from a regional perspective. Regional banks going forward most likely are going to have to prove, right, they have a diverse client base, right? They're not over leveraged, right, and not weighted to one industry who may be at risk. So I would foresee some changes. I'm no expert, but like after 2008, I would see some changes around the regional banks. Signature Bank, right, also similar regional structure, right, in the New York City metropolitan area. That bank was an offshoot of a couple different major banks in and around the New York area. Now, as these banks have sought help, the customers have sought help. And we have been extremely busy, as I'm sure other banks have, as they flock to a safe and trusted bank at this point. I don't think regional banks will be going away. I do think they'll be structured in different rules and laws associated with them going forward, so this doesn't happen again. Now, let's talk about the grad programs, right? So you could go to hsbc.com, go to careers. Jack, I could send you the link, right? And then you can send it out to everybody if you want. Students and graduates, and read about each of our programs. From the Rising Junior Internship to the Rising Senior Internship to the grad programs. There's over a dozen to choose from. You could only apply to one at a time. There's different screening and testing that you need to take. And then if you do well enough in those screenings and testing, you'll be invited back for what we call a super day, which could be a 4 to 6 hour interview with different parts with some senior managers, right, who will take you through the interview process. We usually have over 100 interns in and around New York and some other cosmocratic cities like San Francisco and LA throughout the summer. Our grads are upwards into the 80s as far as the number of grad analysts we have across business lines. But multiply that by around 20 countries, and that's how many grads we have around the world that we connect with, right? We stay in touch with. And that, in fact, in a post-COVID world with Zoom, has expedited that connectivity. So there's good and bad that came out of COVID, which segues me to the office. I am going into the office twice a week, right? Some of the banks have mandated upwards of anywhere between 3 to 5 days, depending on your role. HSBC is not. They find that the work-life balance is beneficial, and they look at that globally. Some of the banks, especially investment banking and trading with the American banks, have asked that their employees come in 4 or 5 days a week. Now, how do you network and grow in a hybrid world? Well, some people have given me the feedback that they find the hybrid world to be more beneficial. It's easier to meet people on Zoom than running around an office building looking for a time and a conference room to sit with somebody, you know, like a senior manager, to get to know them. And that's been feedback that I've heard from both the grads and the interns each and every summer since COVID and post-COVID. So that's going to be the world you live in and navigate. I think it's the best of both worlds, right? If you do work in a hybrid world, there'll be some work-life balance for you as well, less commuting, more time with family and friends because maybe you won't be commuting. I personally like the balance of going into the office, seeing people I need to talk to, arranging for meetings, right, events, and then having my time at home, right, for my strategy calls, right, and strategically to get things done for the program, emerging talent, and the bank. So I wanted to cover, like I said, those 3 or 4 areas. I think it's best at this time we open it up to Q&A. Jack, what do we have? A half hour from 4 or 4:45?
We got till,
Sorry?
we got until 5 p.m. So
Okay. So at this point, let's open it up to questions. I will have Jack get the links to apply that are open thus far. What's gradually going to happen in April and May, the other business lines are going to open. But at least you could read about our different grad programs and decide whether you want to apply, depending what year you are in school. Jack, you want to do introductions? I know it's hard in that room. Or would you rather just do Q&A? We'll do introductions through Q&A.
Yeah, we'll do introductions through Q&A because unfortunately the camera is not working. But, you know, before I even ask, does anyone have any questions here before I ask my question? You guys don't have to be shy. You guys come up to me and try to tell me. Don't be shy. All right. Okay, so I have my first question. So obviously I've asked this to all of our speakers that come in, and I know this club is, wealth management, and it's geared towards the finance majors, and that, do you personally feel like in wealth management, do people that go in the industry, do you feel like they need the CFP, CFA designation? Because I've asked like all of our speakers, and my work can attest to this. I've asked a couple of them, they said, oh, you should get your CFA, get your CFP, get both. Like, what's your take on that?
If you're going to go into an advisory role where you're helping customers with stocks, bonds directly, right? As an advisor, financial advisor, you're better off with the CFP, right? Because you're tied to tax planning, estate planning, not necessarily how the product's built, but the track record of the products that you might be providing as solutions. If you want to go into the building of the products, right, and understanding markets, understanding equities and bonds, right, and corporations and their associated balance sheets, then you go for the CFA.
And we have a question sent me about, do you have any offers? Because I know you did talk about with us a little bit about in-person internships. Do you guys offer any remote internships?
The only internships we offer right now are hybrid through the grad programs. Now, what sometimes happens is there'll be an ad hoc internship opened, especially over the summer with people going on vacation, where they might open it as either hybrid or remote, depending on the candidate. During the school year, we do not have internships, if that's where that remote question was leading toward.
That's regarding towards like out of like school, like summer internships.
Yeah, the summer internships are hybrid, and less specifically, they're open-minded to just having an extra pair of hands over the summer. For instance, audit or compliance might open up and look for 2 interns just to help them out over the summer. They might be open-minded to have the interns that are remote. But the internships that are formalized in connection with the grad program, right? Because the internship's a stepping stone to the grad program based on your performance as an intern, whether you get an offer to come back as an analyst. Those are either hybrid or full-time office, depending. And like I said, we don't really have internships during the fall and winter while you're at school. Some companies do that in a variety of different industries, and they're fine with remote.
Another question just came in. What advice would you give for people just starting their career?
Starting in school or starting like graduating, like they're seniors?
I would say, if you explain both to us, like in both viewpoints, like starting from school and like, graduating.
All right, I would say this. More and more I'm seeing resumes, right, that have business, finance, economics as a major or a minor associated with computer science as a minor or a major, analytics, statistics. That's the way of the world. It's going to be even more digital in every capacity within financial services. That doesn't mean there won't be a human touch to it, right? Obviously, with all the news around chatbot, right, and what it can do to jobs, if you read other articles, you can see how it can help somebody on a job, whether that's to provide advice, right, go through something analytical, whether that's numerical or process mapped. I would say start, if you're in school, out with that mind frame, a balance technically, right, as well as behaviorally. if you want to get into business or financial services.
All right.
Now, coming out of school, don't post for one rotational program if that's what you're looking to do. If you want to post for as many as you want, can. Now, there's not only rotational programs in my puppy. There's not only rotational programs in financial services, the rotational programs tied to finance, right? And management and leadership in other industries. MasterCard has similar programs. Target has similar programs, among others. And they all recruit around the same time. Obviously, the Big Four does, right? If you want to go the accounting, consulting route. So there's many choices for you guys, but to be most flexible, I would say have a balance. Technically, sure as hell have great Excel skills. If you feel you don't, take a course either on campus or pay for one, online where you can get better, or use LinkedIn. Excel has its own LinkedIn series where you could go in and see, well, where are my weak spots? Excel grows ever important as it advances in collaboration with each business line. And I see each class is better and better at it, right? So credit to everybody in school, credit to the universities and the professors. But I would say if you're a whiz at Excel, you got to step up.
All right. Another question just came in. What advice would you give for how to deal with failure?
You know what? It's a great question. First off, learn from it, right? If you recognize it first before your colleagues or managers, be honest about it and upfront about it. If it's through feedback that you didn't realize, to the extent of the failure from a colleague or manager, take it with grace, right? And learn from it. What I would also say from early on for your own conscience is don't sweat the small stuff. And what I mean by that is, and I'll be the first to tell you, earlier in my career, I would have things weigh on me. If they went astray, if they didn't go the direction I wanted to, or if it was somewhat of a failure. You got to let it roll off your back and move on. And get back on the horse. It's a lot like sports, right? I know there's been some excitement on campus over the last week. So I would say the most of all is learn from it. Don't sweat it to a degree where it affects you progressing and moving forward from what you've learned. Leave it behind you, learn from it, get back on the horse, and move on.
The next question I have here is, what were some of the biggest challenges which you faced working in your field?
Well, change. HSBC is a big place, and there's a lot of changes, right? Year to year. I've worked in 22 years for 14 different managers. I've learned from every one of them, right? The good, the bad, right? And that's just life in general in a corporate world is change. And the challenge is sometimes you have to reintroduce yourself, the vision that you might have as far as responsibility you oversee. And that new person who you might report to, or that new employee that might report to you, you have to explain that vision again to them, right? So they understand where you want to go with things. right? And they understand that the change in environments affected you as much as anybody else on the team. So those, I would say, are the challenges. When I was in sales, it was rejection. So some of you might have sales jobs part-time. You learn from rejection and you get better and you're stronger from it. I was in sales for about 11 years. And that's kind of where I learned also to let things kind of roll off your back too. Like, don't take it to the point where it bogs you down with your progress in your career, a vision of where you want to take your career. For me, I was a producer for half my career. And then I made this personal decision that I wanted to become a leader of people. Some people like to stay on one route. They love to be an individual producer for their whole career. Some want to work in the back office and be project management or analysis. Others want to lead people, right, and move up and lead a business. And that is an entirely different skill, right, as far as knowing everything about that business, where it connects, right, and how to relate to the people that you want to get behind you, right, to make it a profitable business.
All right, we got the next question.
Just one example of change. So HSBC sold the branch network, both on the West and East Coast, right, last year. That was a huge change for us as we became more of a boutique bank because we merged with the private bank. So wealth and personal banking merged with private banking. And now what we're doing is we're streamlining our efforts digitally and in person to help people and advise them on their wealth planning, which ties to, right, what Pat teaches some of you at school, right, and what many of you might take with the wealth management minor at FDU.
Or at this point, what's the minimum asset requirement for wealth management clients?
So at the net worth, right, in the premier branches, it's $1 million. So if you want to go into a wealth center, you still have to have $1 million. But I will say this, Pat, that some of the premier clients that have kept fluctuate, right, anywhere between 250,000 to $1 million. But then ultra high net worth, right, where the private bank comes in is 10 million or more. Now, some of them, because of the changes, might be 5 to 10 million swing. So the 1 to 10 million is basically split between the private bank and the wealth center, depending on where their legacy lied, as far as their representative, whether they were in the branch or in the private banking office. Keep in mind, when we sold, 80% of our customers were part of the sale, yet we kept 80% of our deposits because we were looking to become more efficient. You know, in the mass market, you have to have scale. And we dwindled down from 325 branches in like 2010 to 145 branches 2 years ago. And we're an international bank. It was like putting a square peg in a round hole. Where if you look at the American banks, they have 4,000, 5,000 branches and have that scale of brick and mortar that match it. And I think now the business actually turned a profit for the first time since 2012 last year.
Wow.
And we're anticipating that to continue to grow this year. And that's because we realize we can't be everything to everybody. We have to drive where we have a right to win, and that's the international affluent customer who might live in the United States, work in the United States, or do business in the United States, and is connected globally. to their home country or wherever else they might do business. And the strategy, I would say, is working.
Next question we have here is, what advice would you give for someone to stand out when applying for internships or jobs and potentially at HSBC?
Part-time jobs are always helpful. And other internships, certifications. Obviously, grade point average, you need a 3.2 minimum to get into the grad or intern programs. And then clubs on campus, extracurricular, whether it be sports, right, or social, or certain organizations, to show, you know, that you're well-rounded and that you have some breadth. And it shows you're a leader. We want to see people that are dependable, flexible, open-minded, think out of the box, think 2 and 3 steps ahead, and can connect and collaborate.
Well, I had a question. Oh, yeah. So, honestly, I don't know if I remember I saw an article about this. I know you probably talked about hybrid work and like going in the office, but I've seen, I think it was either Goldman Sachs or I think it's probably Goldman Sachs that asked their employees to go back and like probably 3 or 4 days a week in the office. Do you personally feel like in the wealth management industry, we're going towards more of a hybrid, like, you know, in person, like 3 days, virtual 2 days, or do you feel like it's just geared towards like maybe like going for remote or fully in person?
Well, it depends on the role, but a wealth management perspective, whether you're facing off against customers, right, or you're creating the products that the advisors are using to face off against customer, analyzing that, is a hybrid environment. Some of the advisors come in to the office, wealth centers, right? They'll speak 2 or 3 days, right, in the office to clients. You can connect with clients remotely, is what COVID taught us. And most importantly, clients who would always not bring technology had them. And many of them came to love it for their own work-life balance reasons and personal reasons when it comes to their finances. So I would say it's hybrid.
Okay. How's the wealth management industry evolved over the past few years, and what trends do you see emerging in the future?
Goes back to digital. You know, your generation has information at their fingertips. And the wealth management firms, right? 20% of the population in the United States makes up 80% of the wealth. That's what we're going for. And these are people that want information instantaneously. And the speed and quickness with which we're able to supply that, whether it be reactionary or most importantly, proactively, is going to be the difference in the horse race. So as we build our digital platforms, wealth, along with obviously the digital banking that you guys have come accustomed to on your phones, is growing rapidly. That doesn't mean you can't speak to an advisor, right? But information research will be provided to you much faster and proactively, I would say, based on data management as things change, whether that's interest rate environment, news like we had the last couple of weeks. And this is why I suggested that students take something with data, something with analytics, because it's all going to tie into the customer experience and providing the customer the solutions from a product perspective.
can you discuss how HSBC's, because I know we talked a little bit about ESG in here, which for any members who do not know what that is, that's environment, social governance. How does it, I was actually, what? I'm sorry. Can you discuss HSBC's approach to sustainable investing and how you can integrate ESG factors into your investment strategies?
Yeah, so this is obviously a hot topic as regulations become more important for the banks to follow, right? At the same time, you don't want to jump into something that doesn't make sense, right? You guys have heard the terminology greenwashing, right? Where it's not, completely solid A to Z. Being in 65 countries, right? HSBC is a leader in those conversations and discussions and progression. I'm not an expert in it, right? I do oversee ESG from an employee engagement and training perspective for the business. So I'm learning along with the business as we take training on it, right? All the positions, where it's climate action training, sustainability training, diversity and inclusion, which I mentioned earlier. Governance, right? Because we have web-based training that we need to take each year that might tie into it as well. There is going to be plenty of opportunity, right, to create products, right, that make sense for the world, as well as obtain customers that want to change the world for the better when it comes to a sustainable world. You don't want to also, though, give out false promises in either direction, because if you do, then there's just frustration. So I still think it's front burner. It's certainly front burner for us, right? As one of the major international banks that, attends sustainability conferences all over the world, we're certainly a leader in the area, right? As far as the downfalls, the upfalls to product and stuff, I'm not an expert to really speak to that, but I could tell you, right? There's teams in each and every country and globally that are working together, right, in moving that forward.
All right. Another question that I think one of our members asked, and I think this is kind of relevant to our generation, because the rise of artificial intelligence or AI, and now with me being an accounting major, it's also being integrated in with also finance, and even with the release of ChatGPT-4, which our members do have, hopefully use it the right way, not the wrong way. Do you feel like ChatGPT, like sources like ChatGPT or like technology in general, do you feel like it's going to replace like the human, client, like face to face? Do you think AI is going to replace this, or do you feel like it's going to be there just as like a help support, and that person you feel like you go within their face to face and still have that client conversation?
There was an article a couple of years ago I read there's going to be a balance. Now, with the recent news with the chat, bot, it kind of raised the discussion like to an extreme, but if you really think about it, there's things and nuances that you still want to have that personal touch or reflection from a human being. So if you want to be an explicit advisor, including annuities, insurance, stocks, bonds, and that's the route you want to take, I think it's going to be a tool for you to use, as well as a tool for the customer to have that conversation and agree to a plan, right? Or a purchase of a product solution. I think it'll enhance the efficiency of those conversations and decisions from a data perspective. I don't think it'll take hold like you see in some of these futuristic movies.
Can you talk about any like recent initiatives or projects that HSBC has undertaken to better serve like your clients and customers?
I would say the selling of the branch network, right, streamlined everything for us. We became leaner and meaner. We weren't being distracted. So we're serving the ultra high net worth and the high net worth customers who might also have own businesses as well that we could help them with too. I'd say the initiative over the past 2 years of bringing private bank and the retail and wealth banking arm together was revolutionary for a commercial bank, especially an international commercial bank like ourselves, right? In being honest with what we want to do, right? And we understand the other customers need help who might not be affluent, but that's not where we want to go as far as upping our game and being efficient, profitable, right, and doing it right. And that's why I was mentioning, as an international conglomerate, having 165 branches didn't make sense. Having a boutique wealth-driven and advisory planning division makes sense. So that's probably the most important change I've seen. Not, of course, for HSBC, but for the business that I know best.
What are some of the biggest challenges that your clients at HSBC are facing in today's economic environment? And how do you feel like the HSBC can help them navigate through these like challenges?
Well, look, interest rates is number one on customers' minds, inflation, right? Because they might be affected with their businesses with that. And that's where our expertise comes in, on understanding the Fed, understanding interest rate movements. You know, we have morning calls every morning around markets, right? And what to anticipate, so we could have educated conversations on the economic environment with our clients when it comes to their banking deposits, their insurance policies, their equities, right? And bonds they might own with us. And if any changes need to be made, understand as to why.
I think, do we have time? Mitchell, do you have any questions, or does Kevin have any questions? I know, Kevin, your mic's not working, but if you want to type in the chat, you can. Or does anyone here in person want to ask any more questions? Because I'm going to ask the final question.
Great questions.
All right, I guess I'm going to be the one to ask the final question. I usually ask this to all our speakers.
Yeah, you guys could hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Barth Frank in the country. Okay, so it won't be hard to find. And Jack, I'll send you the link to the website and the other links. It might come from the campus recruiter. And then you guys can navigate. If you don't want to apply to any of them in GBM, you could wait for the others to open up in commercial banking and wealth and personal banking.
We will do that. I think
and I would strongly recommend you guys apply to all the internship and rotational analyst programs with all the banks and any others that I might have mentioned or in other industries.
All right. Last question. I usually ask this to all of our speakers, and it's usually a two-parter. If you had to go back to when you were a freshman in college, what was the one piece of advice you want to give to your past self? And then we do have some members in here that are, I think from Facebook, I know some of you are freshmen, sophomores and they haven't really determined a major yet. And what would be then, the second part of the question would be, what would be the one piece of advice you would want to give to a freshman or sophomore who has not decided yet if they want to go down wealth management or not, or planning on doing a minor or major wealth management?
Look, go find an internship locally that you could work at create, whether that's a law firm, a brokerage firm. There's a couple towns near FDU that you could look at, right? And insurance agencies, because that's the distribution. That's where the rubber hits the road. And that's where you really cut your teeth. So looking back at myself, I should have done that earlier. That's first off. Be serious early. Like, I know college is all fun, there's a lot to offer as far as the fun route, but be disciplined as early as your freshman year. Take other courses that might help you. Not necessarily on campus, but like certifications, like I mentioned earlier. So those are the three things. Get out of the gate fast. You'll feel better about it once you're a junior or senior.
All righty. No one else has any more questions? Barth, I really appreciate you coming back to speak to us again. Our members really appreciate you coming in here. I suggest all our members after today's meeting, please network with him on LinkedIn. Please do. And with that, thank you so much, Barth, for taking time and speaking to us today.
All right, Jack, thanks for putting it together. It was great seeing you all or hearing from you all. Great questions, really great questions. Congratulations to FDU, right, on the last week. It was fun for the entire tri-state area to watch. And I appreciate Pat joining.
We will. It's today is your birthday, actually, so I will definitely, I'm actually see your name for PDP event, so I'll definitely bring you up.
All right, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
We hopefully see you soon. Thank you so much, Barth.
All right, enjoy the warm weather coming finally.
We will. Thank you.